If you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice. My 13-year-old niece giggled as she said it, unwrapping the plastic from the $850 phone I had just handed her. Her voice was light, almost sing-song, like she didn't understand the knife she'd just twisted in my chest. But the words weren't hers. They belonged to someone else. Mom says, that's what she'd said. Mom says. And just like that, the entire room, the 30 people packed into Lindsay's living room, erupted in laughter. I stood there holding the empty gift box in my hands like a fool, like the fool they'd all gotten used to, the one who showed up with gifts, the one who paid for dinner, the one who fixed things, and always the one who got laughed at behind his back, or tonight, right to my face. Lindsay didn't even look up from her phone. She just smirked, a tiny flick of her lips like she was proud of her daughter for repeating it so perfectly. Dad raised his beer and muttered, "Well, she's not wrong." The words weren't even angry, they were amused. Casual. Like this was just another joke in a long-running sitcom where I was the punchline. Uncle Gary snorted into his drink. A couple of cousins exchanged glances and chuckled. Even Mom, standing in the kitchen, didn't turn around, but I saw the way her shoulders twitched. She'd heard it. She always heard everything. She just didn't care. I should have said something. I should have left. But instead, I stood there nodding like I was part of it, like I deserved it, because that's what they taught me to do, nod, smile, pretend it doesn't hurt. The cake sat untouched on the kitchen counter, 23 candles waiting for their moment, but the flames were already burning, just not on the cake. Inside me, something began to crack. I wasn't sad, not exactly. It was colder than that, quieter. The kind of hurt that wraps itself around your ribs and squeezes until your breath shortens and your vision narrows. My niece glanced at me. Glanced. "Thanks for the phone, Uncle Ethan," she chirped without looking up from the glowing screen. I couldn't respond, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know how to. What do you say to a child who repeats her mother's cruelty like it's scripture? What do you say when your whole family agrees? I stood there in my pressed shirt and clean jeans, my wallet a little lighter, my dignity a little thinner. No one saw me, not really. Not even now, standing right in front of them. And for the first time in my life, I realized something. They never had. "All right, everyone, let's cut the cake," Mom called, clapping her hands as if she hadn't just condoned emotional violence seconds before. The group cheered. Everyone gathered around. The lights dimmed, candles flickered to life, and voices rang out in that familiar birthday chorus. I didn't sing. I stood off to the side in the shadows, watching the celebration unfold without me. They didn't notice. Of course they didn't. Because the one thing my niece got right tonight, the only thing was that if I disappeared tomorrow, none of them would even notice. But I was done disappearing quietly. 2 taps. That's all it took. One on my phone, then another. A quiet confirmation that every account, every subscription, every payment plan, every shared credit line I had set up for Lindsay, for Mom, for Dad, was gone. Canceled. Closed. Erased. The air felt lighter, my hands steadier. And just like that, I stopped being their safety net. But they didn't know that yet. Not tonight. They would laugh, they would toast, they would take photos and sing songs and blow out candles while I stood there like wallpaper. But tomorrow, they'd feel the silence. They'd check their accounts and feel the emptiness. They'd call and realize I wasn't there. They'd search and find nothing but echoes. And that's when they'd notice. But by then, I'd already be gone. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was sad, not because I was angry, because I was awake for the first time in years. It's a strange thing realizing your whole family sees you as nothing more than a walking wallet. Stranger still is understanding that they're not even trying to hide it anymore. They want you to know. That's the real betrayal. They want you to feel it. I sat on the edge of my bed in the same clothes I wore to the party. My niece's laughter still rang in my ears, bouncing off the walls like a cruel lullaby. I stared at the phone she'd unboxed with such joy, bought with money scraped from my last bonus money I could have used for new tires or rent or a vacation I never took. And they laughed. Mom, Dad, Lindsay, all of them. They laughed like I was a character in their little family sitcom, bumbling Uncle Ethan always around to foot the bill, always alone, always available. Not anymore. I stood up, walked to the closet, and grabbed the black backpack. It had been there for years, faded, stitched at the seams, quiet as a secret. I hadn't used it since college, but tonight it felt like the only thing that still belonged to me. I didn't pack clothes. I packed proof, receipts, bank statements, signed agreements I'd made when bailing out Lindsay's car loan, screenshots of Venmo transfers for rent, old credit card bills that showed who really paid for Dad's dental surgery, for Mom's groceries, for Lindsay's streaming subscriptions, for those family vacations they took without me. All of it. I printed it out. Each page. A trail of silent sacrifice. Then I walked out of my apartment. The night air was crisp, almost mocking. I drove back to the house, their house, the one I'd quietly helped refinance 3 years ago. It was nearly 2 a.m. The party was long over, but the porch light was still on. They hadn't even noticed I'd left. I slipped inside like a thief, the same way I'd always entered their lives quietly without disrupting the peace. I placed the black backpack beside the stairs, right where they'd all see it. I didn't leave a note. What was there to say? They'd never read the truth when I said it. Maybe they'd read it when it stared back at them in ink, and then I vanished. Not into thin air, but into my life. The next morning came with a storm I didn't see but felt. It began with the pounding on my door. Hard, urgent, desperate. Open up. You think you can just do this? Dad's voice hoarse and cracking. The kind of panic that comes from watching a safety net snap. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Let him feel the same silence I'd sat in for years. I know you're in there. You think you're better than us. You think you're smarter. Yes, I thought. Yes, I know. His fists hit the door a few more times, then silence. I imagined him standing there, waiting for me to rush forward like I always had. But the door didn't open. Eventually, I heard his footsteps retreat, a car door slam, the screech of tires, then my phone, buzzing, lighting up, text from Mom. How could you do this to your own family? No greeting, no love, just the guilt they'd used like currency for decades. I didn't respond. Call from Lindsay, 6 times in a row. I watched her name flicker on the screen like a warning flare. Then came the message, "You think you're so clever. You think we can't live without you. Fine. See how long you last without a family." I almost laughed. Was that supposed to be a threat or a promise? But the real explosion came that evening. I just stepped out of the shower, still wrapped in a towel, when I heard the click of a key turning in my lock. My stomach dropped. No one had a key. No one except... The door burst open. Dad stormed in, red-faced and shaking. Behind him, Mom, her hair, wild eyes wide and glassy. "You think you can lock us out?" he shouted. "Get out," I said calmly. My voice didn't even rise. "This is what you've become," Mom cried. "Abandoning your own blood. We raised you." "No," I said, still drying my hair. "You used me. There's a difference." Dad stepped forward, fists clenched, a lifetime of bluff in his stance. "Try it," I said. That stopped him, because deep down, he knew. I wasn't that kid anymore. I wasn't afraid. I was done. Mom's voice cracked. "What did you do?" "The cards don't work. Lindsay can't pay her bills." "The mortgage gone," I said. They stared. Dad's laugh was bitter, high-pitched, manic. "You think we need you. You think we can't manage." "Seems like you can't," I replied, glancing at the door. "Since you broke into my apartment to beg." "Beg," he roared. "Beg," I said again, calm, controlled, precise. Mom stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Please, this is your family. We're all we have." "No," I said. "You're all you have, and I'm not part of that anymore." Dad's face twisted. You little pest. Out, I snapped. Now. He hesitated. His shoulders sagged. His pride shattered. You'll regret this, he muttered. I won't. They left. They slammed the door. But it didn't matter, because for the first time in my life, they were the ones on the outside. They didn't go quiet. Of course they didn't. People like that never do, not when they're exposed, not when they're desperate, and especially not when they've lost their grip on the one person they never thought would walk away. The very next morning, I woke up to a phone vibrating off my nightstand like it was possessed. 32 missed calls, 7 voicemails, a dozen new texts, each one more unhinged than the last. Mom was first, a voice note. Her tone quivered, hovering between wounded and manipulative. You're breaking our hearts, Ethan. We didn't mean it. Families fight. Please don't throw everything away over a joke. A joke. That's what they called it now. The moment that cracked me wide open, just a little joke, I deleted it. Then Lindsay. Her messages were like knives dipped in poison. You think you're some hero? You're a coward. A selfish, bitter coward. You've ruined everything. 5 minutes later, another message. Please just talk to me. I didn't mean it. I was scared. Don't do this. No apology, just desperation. Then came the voicemails from Dad. His anger had morphed into a twisted calm, the kind that carries an agenda. Let's settle this like men. Just you and me, no drama. He even suggested going to the stadium. Our team's playing this weekend, he said, like we were still father and son, like I didn't see through him. It was bait, a setup. And I took it, because I wanted them to see exactly what they'd lost and why. Saturday. Game day. The stadium roared around me, a wall of noise, energy, and color, but inside I was steel. I walked up the concrete steps of Section 12, Row F. There he was. Dad sitting alone in a sea of empty seats, holding the black backpack on his lap like it was radioactive. He waved overly casual, like he hadn't broken into my apartment 5 days ago. I sat down. Not because I wanted to be close, but because this was my closure. You surprised me, he said, smiling thin. Didn't think you'd show. You've always underestimated me, I said. He chuckled. Fair enough. Look. His voice dropped. We found the bag. He patted it like it was a dog that might bite. You think you're clever, huh, walking away, making a scene? I didn't respond. We know, he said. We know what you've been doing. Acting like a martyr. Playing the victim. I turned toward him, my expression blank. Open it. He blinked. What? The backpack? Open it. He hesitated. His fingers curled around the zipper but didn't move. I saw the doubt creeping in like smoke through a crack in the door. I don't need to open it, he said. I already know what's in there. Proof you were manipulating us, hiding money, stashing things. I smiled. That's what you think, go ahead. Let's see what I've been hiding. He didn't move. So I reached over, unzipped the backpack, and pulled out the stack, a thick bundle of papers neatly clipped together. Dozens of pages, years of receipts, payments, texts, bank statements. I held them up. Proof of everything I did for you. Rent, medical bills, groceries, Lindsay's car, the mortgage, streaming services. That stupid FKN ice maker you swore was essential. People around us were starting to notice. Eyes turned. Phones lifted. Let's tell the truth, I said, voice loud enough for the people behind us. Let's tell them how I carried this family while you all spit in my face. Stop, Dad muttered. Put that away. No. You want a scene? Here it is. I scattered the papers across his lap. A few slid down the bleachers like autumn leaves, unpaid debts, invoices, canceled checks. You betrayed me, I said. Not with a knife. With silence. With laughter. With every damn time you let them joke at my expense while you drained me dry. You think you're some kind of hero, he hissed. No, I said. I think I'm free. He stared at me, breathing hard, cheeks flushed red. For a moment I saw it fear. Not of me, of the truth. You'll regret this, he muttered, not looking at me now. You'll come crawling back. I won't, I said simply. And then I stood up, turned around and walked up those stairs past the people whispering, filming, nodding. Because he was wrong. I wasn't crawling back. I was walking out for good. They didn't stop. Of course not. That confrontation at the stadium, that was just Act 1 in their attempt to retake control. And when guilt failed and public humiliation backfired, they turned to chaos. That night, my landlord knocked on my door, awkward, uncertain hat in hand. "Hey, Ethan, there's a situation downstairs." I raised an eyebrow. "Your family's here," he said, making kind of a scene. Of course they were. I peered through the blinds. There they were. Mom, Dad, and Lindsay, on the sidewalk, yelling, pacing, waving their arms like they were summoning demons. Lindsay was crying mascara streaked down her cheeks. Dad had that dangerous stillness about him, the kind that only broken fists or slurs. "Tell them to leave," I said. The landlord shifted. "I mean, it's your family." "No," I corrected. "It's not." 5 minutes later, security escorted them off the property, but I knew it wasn't over, because they weren't trying to win me back. They were trying to win control of the story. The next morning, I received a string of messages from people I hadn't heard from in years, second cousins, church acquaintances, old friends from back home. "Hey, just wanted to check in. Your mom's really upset. Says you've gone off the deep end. Your sister says you're having a breakdown. Something about cutting off support. Are you okay? I mean, money problems are tough." They'd spun a new narrative. Ethan, the unstable black sheep. Ethan, the cruel son. Ethan, the one who turned his back on his poor, suffering family. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Let them talk. Let them tell stories. I had the truth, and I had freedom. But they weren't done. Lindsay showed up at my office. She didn't even disguise the desperation anymore. Tried to barge in past reception. Security stopped her at the elevators. I watched the whole thing from behind the tinted glass of the conference room. She was ranting, pointing, practically foaming at the mouth. And even as her voice cracked, "He's my brother. He's ruining our lives." I just sat there. I didn't move. I didn't blink. She was escorted out in less than 5 minutes. But before she left, she turned back and stared at the building like it had betrayed her. She wasn't really angry at me. She was angry at the system that finally said no. Because for the first time in her life, no one came running. That night, I received a letter. An actual physical letter. Handwritten in trembling cursive. From Mom. It was thick with guilt and sugar-coated poison. "Your father is getting sick. Lindsay is struggling. We can't pay the bills. We've been trying so hard, but everything is falling apart." And then, the kicker. "You're the only one who can fix this." That line was underlined, twice. I stared at the letter for a long time, and then I burned it. No dramatic flourish, just lit the edge with a match and dropped it into the kitchen sink. I watched the paper curl and darken, the ink dissolving into black veins until all that was left were ashes, because I wasn't their fixer anymore. 3 days later, I saw Dad again. He was waiting outside my building, pacing like a caged animal. When he spotted me across the street, he sprinted like he hadn't run in years. I didn't slow down. "Ethan, you can't do this to us." I kept walking. He stepped in front of me, breathless and wild-eyed. "You don't get to walk away, not after everything we did for you." I stopped, not because I wanted to, but because it was time. Time to end the story they kept writing. "You raised me," I said calmly. "Sure. You also used me, mocked me, drained me, and you laughed while doing it." His hand shot out, grabbing my arm. "You think you're better than us?" I pulled free without even flinching. "I think I'm finally free of you." And then he swung. A pathetic, sloppy punch that barely grazed my shoulder. It wasn't an attack. It was a tantrum. He stumbled, catching himself on the brick wall beside us. "Pathetic," I muttered, his face contorted rage bubbling to the surface. "You'll come crawling back. You always do. You're nothing without us." I laughed. Sharp, loud, unapologetic. "I was nothing with you," I said, turning my back, and this time I didn't look back. The fallout didn't stop them. It only made them louder, angrier, desperate. And desperation does something dangerous to people like them. It makes them reveal who they really are. After the office incident, after the street confrontation, after the letters and the screaming voicemails, they made their next move. They tried to ruin me. It started small. A Facebook post from Lindsay. Something vague. Some people are only generous when they're being worshipped. The second you need them, they vanish. Family is supposed to be forever. Then came Mom. Her post had more bite. Watching your own child turn cold. We raised him with love, and now he won't even return our calls. Please pray for our broken family. At first, people bought it. Sympathy flooded the comments. Distant relatives, church people, Facebook friends who hadn't seen me in years. Some even messaged me directly. Your mom seems really hurt. Maybe give her a chance. Everyone makes mistakes, Ethan. Don't throw away your family over money. But I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself. Because I didn't owe them the truth. Not anymore. And then something shifted. One person, an old coworker of Lindsay's, commented something that cracked the mask wide open. Funny, I remember you bragging last year about your brother paying your rent. You didn't seem so broken then. That comment got deleted within minutes. But it was too late. Others started to question. Someone else posted screenshots of Lindsay begging for money in group chats. Another pointed out the GoFundMe Mom launched to support our recovery after Ethan's cruelty was full of lies. The truth leaked quietly at first, but it spread like fire under the floorboards. Meanwhile, I kept living, working, eating, sleeping, breathing, and they kept drowning. Dad lost his job again. This time, not because of the economy or bad luck, but because he'd snapped at a supervisor and thrown a clipboard. Lindsay's car got repossessed. The house, the one I helped save twice, slipped into pre-foreclosure. Their world was collapsing brick by brick as mine finally started to feel like home. And through it all, I said nothing. Silence became my sword. Until one day, I got an envelope. Plain, white. No return address. Inside, there were photos, screenshots, of the Facebook posts, of texts, of family group chats that I had been removed from months ago, and at the bottom, scrawled in messy handwriting, they're telling everyone you're unstable, that you stole from them, that you left your niece crying. You should know what they're saying. No signature. But I recognized the writing. It was my cousin Becca. Quiet. Observant. Always on the edge of family events, never quite included. We weren't close, but she saw things. And now she saw me. So I did something I hadn't done since the night of the birthday party. I logged back into Facebook, and I posted just one thing, a photo of the black backpack unzipped wide open. Inside were the documents I'd shown my father at the stadium. Neat rows of receipts, transfer records, credit statements, a page with Lindsay's rent history all in my name, a copy of the refinancing papers for Mom and Dad's house co-signed by me. I didn't add a caption, didn't explain, just posted it. Let the image speak for itself. Let the facts stand still while the noise collapsed. And they did. In the comments, people started asking questions, polite at first, then pointed, then brutal. Why does your son's name appear on your mortgage? Didn't Ethan pay for your medical bills last summer? Wait, so he's the one who bought the phone, not you? The silence from their end was deafening, and for the first time in my life, the story wasn't theirs to tell anymore. It was mine. Lindsay deleted her entire profile within 24 hours. Mom posted a vague message about forgiveness and moving on. Dad didn't post anything. He never did. But I heard from Becca a week later. They're trying to sell the house. Word is they can't afford the taxes now that your name's off the documents. I thanked her. Not because I needed confirmation, but because it felt right. She saw me. And one quiet afternoon walking through the park, I realized they couldn't twist the story anymore, because their version only worked when I stayed quiet, when I let them talk. But I'd spoken in the clearest language they understood. Proof. Paper, distance, and no matter how loud they screamed, how many lies they told, they couldn't unwrite what I'd lived. Silence. That was the final weapon, and it was mine now. After the Facebook post, after the confrontation at the stadium, after the countless messages and failed ambushes, the noise stopped. Not because they gave up, because they ran out of moves. They'd tried guilt, they'd tried rage, they'd tried pity, they even tried rewriting history. But I didn't bite, and that terrified them more than anything. A few weeks after the post, I walked down Main Street past all the old landmarks of my former life. The boutique where I used to buy gifts for Lindsay's daughter, the restaurant where I covered every family dinner, the pharmacy where I picked up Dad's prescriptions and never got reimbursed. Each place used to carry weight, memories, resentments, now just ghosts, buildings with new tenants, streets with different music, a town that never really saw me and didn't realize when I left. I stopped in front of a bakery where I'd once bought a cake for Mom's birthday, a triple-layer lemon chiffon with candied flowers. She barely touched it, complained it was too sweet, then handed it off to the neighbor the next day. I stood there, hands in my coat pockets, watching the baker set a fresh pie in the window, and I smiled. Not because of nostalgia, but because for the first time the memory didn't sting. It just passed, like fog, dissolving in sunlight. Back at my apartment, I kept the black backpack on the top shelf of my closet, not as a trophy, not as revenge, but as a ledger, a quiet record of the moment I remembered my own worth. Sometimes I opened it, not often, just when the doubt crept in, when I questioned if I'd done the right thing, if I'd been too harsh, if I was the villain in their version of the story. But every time I'd run my fingers along the edge of the first document, a receipt for Lindsay's car down payment. Her car, my name. No thanks, just laughter. And then the doubt would fade, because I hadn't burned bridges. I'd simply walked off them before they collapsed under me. I got a new phone number, new job eventually. Same city. Because I refused to run. Let them move. Let them explain their silence when people ask where I've gone. Let them feel the weight of a son, a brother, an uncle they taught to disappear. And now, finally, he did. Every now and then, I'd see people from the old circle, a cousin at the market, an old friend from high school at the gas station. They'd glance at me, smile hesitantly. Some would say hi, a few didn't, but none of them brought up the family, not once. Maybe they knew better. Maybe the rumors had unraveled on their own. Maybe the silence had done its job. Whatever the reason, I was fine with it. I liked being unknown again, invisible on my terms. One Saturday, I was sitting outside a local coffee shop reading a paperback when a little girl passed by holding her dad's hand. She reminded me of my niece, same age, same bright eyes. But this girl was different. She looked up at her father and said, "Thanks for the hot chocolate, Daddy." He smiled down at her, brushing hair from her face. And just like that, I realized something. She saw him, not as a wallet, not as a servant, but as a person. That moment hit me harder than any voicemail ever could, because I had been that dad without the child, that giver without the gratitude, and now I didn't need either. I finished my drink, tipped the barista well, and walked home with the sun on my back. Later that night, I stood at my window as the city buzzed below. No messages, no missed calls, no begging, just quiet. And for the first time in my life, I felt whole. Not angry, not empty, just free. They were still out there, Mom, Dad, Lindsay, living in the wreckage of their own design, still telling their version of the story to whoever would listen. But it didn't matter, because the people who mattered knew the truth, and the rest, they weren't my responsibility. I left behind a version of myself they all depended on, the fixer, the giver, the fool. They'd buried him in jokes and guilt and backhanded smiles. But I climbed out, and now they're the ones stuck in that graveyard whispering to a ghost who no longer answers. Have you ever faced something like this? Have you been the silent one, the giver, the one who vanished without applause? Share your story in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe. There's strength in walking away. And sometimes, silence is the loudest victory.